Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast. And last week we announced some brand new secret lairs. Dr. Lair Secretorium Superdrop is now here. And there's some pretty cool stuff in there. Today I thought I'd go behind the scenes a little bit and tell you about the history of some of these cards, some fun facts, and some behind the scenes design insights. Ready? Let's do it. Let's kick it off with a fun story you probably don't know about. So all the way back in the early 2000s, the Magic design team was working on Ravnica, the original Ravnica block, I should say. And they were making 10 brand new dual lands. These would go on to be the shock lands, and players would definitely grow to love them. And they knew at the time they were going to be a really big hit. So there's a big argument internally. Should they have names that were tied to Ravnica, or names that were generic that you could use somewhere else? The argument in favor of Ravnica themed names is you get awesome flavor. For example, imagine if Is It Boilerworks, which was the bounce land of the set, was the name of Steam Vents. It would really tie in when you're using that card to Ravnica. But on the other side of the argument is the problem that although planar locked names are more flavorful, they also are locked to that plane. We ran into this problem with the Pain lands. For example, Caves of Koilos or Adakar Wastes. These are locations that only show up on Dominaria, so you couldn't just reprint the Pain lands in Ravnica or some other set, for example. The argument raged on, and the debate between these awesome new dual lands being tied to the world versus making agnostic names so we could reprint them somewhere else went back and forth and back and forth. But ultimately, it was decided to give them more generic names so they could show up in other places. Well, over 15 years later, the original Ravnica design team is finally getting paid off for their decision with the Culture Shocks Secret Lair. Available in your favorite shard combination, this finally takes all 10 Ravnica dual lands and places them on planes that aren't Ravnica. What does a breeding pool look like on New Phyrexia? What does a temple garden look like on Theros? What is a Kylum Hollowed Fountain anyway? There's all kinds of cool stuff here. And I would particularly pay attention to the flavor text. There's some really fun bits of flavor text that show off the evolution of planes and what's been going on there. For example, I really love the Overgrown Tomb flavor text, which talks about how Marchesa has taken the throne away from Brago, which happened in Conspiracy 2. And now that tomb is truly a tomb for Brago. One of the really cool things about secret lairs is that, like a Commander Legends or Modern Horizons, they aren't bound to a place or a time. So you can hop around and see all kinds of different planes and get a bit of a smorgasbord here. And I hope that in the future, we see more stuff like this, looking across all of Magic's wonderful planes and time periods too. The Ravnica Shocklands show up across many formats. They're played in Modern, they're played in Pioneer, they see plenty of Commander play, and if we ever go back to Ravnica, there's a good chance you'll see them in Standard again, too. And let's be real, someday we'll be going back to Ravnica. And when we do, you can have these versions of the Shocklands ready to go for your Standard decks. Let's move on to Our Show is on Friday, Can You Make It? And these are 5 cards that are all done by people who draw concert posters. They're all hand-drawn for just that card, and really, really unique and cool. The Secret Lair team thought this treatment would particularly be exciting for Commander players. So all 5 of these cards are cards that show up a decent amount in Commander, although some of them certainly show up in other formats too. Now let me tell you some fun facts about each of these cards. First up, Decree of Pain. This one debuted in Scourge and was part of a decree cycle that showed off Corona in the art of all of the cards. And internally, this was called super cycling, where you would cycle and still get a pretty sweet effect for it. I looked in the design notes for Decree of Pain, and there was one pretty big change. Originally, the main hard-casted mode of the card only give all creatures -4/-4. But the problem with that was it didn't actually work. If you give everything -4/-4 and then draw a card for each creature that died that way, well, technically, no creatures have died because they don't die until after the spell resolves and state-based actions are checked. So they thought, well, let's make it destroy all the creatures instead. That's a pretty big buff to Decree of Pain. But hey, worked out great, and now it's a Commander staple. I looked up the design notes for Preordain as well. Originally, it was just Scry 5. Yes, that's right, 1 blue mana, Scry 5. No draw card, just Scry 5. Which makes for a pretty complicated common. I haven't done the math, but according to a multiverse comment, Aaron Forsyth says that creates 720 different permutations of where you can place all of those cards. That's a lot for a common. Gamble is an awesome red tutor for your Commander decks. One of my favorite things to do is gamble for a card I don't mind going into my graveyard anyway. For example, Life from the Loam. Nature's Lore, the Commander staple, has seen mini printings. But do you know which set it showed up in first? Take a moment, see if you can guess it. Ready? It's Ice Age. That's right, Nature's Lore is actually originally from Ice Age. That's not the version I think of when I think of the card, but man, it's been around for a long time. For a very long time, Wrath of God was a standard staple. It would get reprinted over and over, and you could kind of always expect it to be in standard. And then a few things changed over time. First of all, at one point, we wanted to get rid of our religious references on Magic cards, so Wrath of God went for that reason. But then also we kind of got rid of it because, well, regeneration isn't a thing we really do anymore. And then finally we kind of stopped doing it because in standard, we don't do 4 mana sweepers, or at least that often. That said, it has always been a popular card. It has a ton of nostalgia. So we're looking for places to reprint it, and well, a Secret Lair is a great spot for it to show up. One of the fun things about Secret Lairs is it gives us a space to try out niche ideas that people have always kind of joked about, such as the case with the full text lands. Pretty much as soon as people saw the original full art lands in Unglued, they started joking about doing full text lands. And for us internally, we've joked about it a lot too. We even talked about doing it for Unstable. But the problem was ultimately we figured people just wouldn't want these as much as they would want full art lands. But in a Secret Lair, it's finally the right place to do them. You can find all 5 basic lands in full text versions in a single Secret Lair drop. Now, one interesting thing about these cards is these are the only cards in Magic that don't have an artist. Yes, that's right, there's no artist for these cards. Poor little naked bottom of the card frame. I am very curious to see what all of you think about these. Love them, hate them, let me know in the comments down below. And finally, we get to showcase Strixhaven. These are 6 cards, all in the Strixhaven Mystical Archive frame. Now, the thing that's happening here is that a lot of these are 2-color allied color cards. You might have noticed that Strixhaven does not have allied color gold cards on the Mystical Archive sheet, and that's because they were very misleading in draft. For example, if you drafted a green-white Mystical Archive card, you might try and go into a green-white deck, which is a total train wreck because green-white isn't a supported college in Strixhaven. So we decided not to do them there, but we didn't want to cut them out entirely. So we have one for each of the allied color pair combinations, plus just an Eldrazi weirdo showing up in this box. A few fun facts about these. You may or may not already know Artifact Mutation, but did you know that it is part of a 4-card cycle from Invasion Block? Each one green and another color that does something to a permanent and then gives you saplings equal to its mana value. A fun fact about Fire Covenant is it has just never been reprinted. This is the first time since Ice Age it's showing up in Paper Magic. Fractured Identity actually came from Commander 2017, which was my first lead design of a product, believe it or not. And it was in the Dragons deck. Why? Well, we were looking for cards to put into the Dragons deck that weren't just dragons. So if you didn't love dragons, you still have a reason to pick up the deck. And Mark Gottlieb pitched this really cool version of a card that was kind of like a clone where you exile the thing and then everyone else got a copy of that thing. And it stuck pretty much exactly the same the whole way through. Good work, Fractured Identity. And it's still a sweet card to play in Commander and also Cube. This card is really underrated in Cube. Pick it up if you have the chance. And there you have it, a look at Dr. Lair's Secretorium Superdrop. I don't work on Secret Lairs personally, but I'm always excited to see what they come up with, and I can't wait to see what they do next. I'm curious to know what all of you think about these cards. Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk with you again on Wednesday, and in the meantime, may you have a lot of fun looking at full text lands. You got this.
So this is a completely new form of taxing, right? It's like, can I go into my opponent's hand and say, all right, I am picking a card, and this card I chose costs you 2 mana more permanently, right? That's really cool to me because it's very novel and it's interactive in a new way.